Millionaire takes single mom receptionist to a gala dinner, but he never thought she would do that. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Clare Miller had perfected the art of being invisible. Every morning at 7:15, she kissed her 10-year-old daughter Sophie goodbye, promising to be home by 6. Every morning, Sophie hugged her a little tighter than necessary, and Clare pretended not to notice. 2 years without a father did that to a child, made every goodbye feel like it might be the last one. The bus to downtown Seattle smelled like coffee and regret. Clare pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the city wake up. Somewhere in one of those glass towers, there were women her age, 38, not old, not young, making decisions that mattered, leading teams, changing industries. She was going to answer phones. The thought didn't make her bitter anymore. Bitterness required energy she didn't have. After David died, after the funeral where his colleagues praised his brilliant mind and his way with words, after the sympathy casseroles stopped coming and the bills kept arriving, after all of that, she'd learned that survival wasn't pretty. It was practical, and she was grateful. Grateful for the health insurance. Grateful that Sophie's school was good. Grateful that her mother Dorothy lived close enough to help. Grateful, invisible, and utterly alone in a crowd. Cleantech Solutions occupied the 14th floor of the Morrison building, glass and steel and the hum of progress. Clare had worked the reception desk for 18 months now, and she knew things. She knew that Marcus from accounting was having an affair, that Jennifer, the CEO's assistant, was secretly interviewing at other companies, that the night janitor had a daughter in college and worked 3 jobs to pay for it. She knew these things because people talked around her like she was furniture. Good morning, Clare. Coffee, please, Clare. Hold my calls, Clare. Never. What do you think, Clare? She settled into her chair, logged into the system, and became part of the machinery. Phone lines lit up. She connected them. Visitors arrived. She greeted them. The building breathed, and she was its heartbeat, steady and unnoticed. At 9:23, Elijah Hall walked through the lobby. He did this every morning, 9:23 exactly. Clare had never seen him early or late, not once. The CEO of Cleantech Solutions was a creature of precision, a man who'd built a clean energy empire on the back of genius and an almost pathological devotion to logic. He was also, Clare thought, the loneliest person she'd ever seen. Today, he wore charcoal grey. Yesterday, navy blue. Always a suit, never a smile. His dark hair was starting to show silver at the temples, 45 years old and handsome in that austere, unreachable way. Like a lighthouse on a distant shore, you could see the light, admire its steadiness, but you'd never actually reach it. Their eyes met for half a second. "Good morning, Mr. Hall." He nodded, didn't speak. Headed for the elevator. Clare watched him disappear behind the closing doors. Somewhere in that brilliant mind, was there ever space for something as human as loneliness? Did he go home to an empty apartment and wonder why success tasted like dust? Stop it, she told herself. He's not your problem. You're not his solution. But she'd noticed something today, a tension in his shoulders, a distraction in his gaze. Something was wrong in Elijah Hall's perfectly ordered world. She would find out what by lunchtime. She always did. The call came at 2:37. Clare was scheduling a conference room for the marketing team when her phone buzzed with an internal extension. Jennifer Torres, executive assistant to Elijah Hall. Jennifer's voice was tight. "Can you come to the 14th floor, Mr. Hall's office, now, please?" Clare's heart stuttered. In 18 months, she'd never been summoned upstairs, never been to the executive suite. People like her didn't go there unless they were being fired. She checked her reflection in her phone screen. Brown hair pulled back in a neat bun, minimal makeup, a navy dress that was professional without trying to be anything more. She looked exactly like what she was, competent, forgettable, safe. The elevator ride to 14 felt like ascending to another world. When the doors opened, the air even smelled different, richer. Leather and expensive coffee and the kind of confidence that came from never wondering how to pay for groceries. Jennifer met her in the hallway. The woman looked terrible, pale, sweating, holding her side. "I need you to not ask questions," Jennifer said. Her voice shook. "I need you to listen, okay? I'm going to the hospital, right now. Appendicitis, they think, and the Gala, the Clean Energy Investment Gala. It's in 2 days. Claire knew about the Gala. Everyone knew. It was the company's make-or-break moment. $200 million in funding hung in the balance. Japanese investors, the future of clean tech solutions. Jennifer grabbed Claire's arm. "Mr. Hall can't do this alone. He's brilliant with technology, but he's terrible with people. He doesn't know how to read a room, doesn't understand that business is about more than data. And these investors, they're traditional. They value relationships. Connection. He's going to lose everything if someone doesn't help him." Claire's pulse quickened. "What are you asking me? I'm asking you to save this company." The words hung between them like a challenge, like a dare, like a door opening in a wall Claire had thought was solid. "Me? I'm the receptionist. You're the most organized person in this building. You notice everything. You remember everyone's name, their children's names, their birthdays. You make people feel seen." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, pain or desperation or both. "He needs someone who can do what he can't, and I think that's you." Before Claire could answer, a door opened down the hall. Elijah Hall stepped out of his office. His tie was loosened. His usually perfect hair was disheveled. He looked at Jennifer, then at Claire, and something flickered across his face, not quite recognition, more like seeing her for the first time. "Miss Miller," he said. His voice was deep, careful. "I understand you've been briefed on the situation." Claire found her voice. "I'm sorry about Jennifer. I hope it's not serious." "It's serious enough." He moved closer. 3 steps. Close enough that she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the exhaustion he usually hid. "I have a proposition for you. $1,000 for 1 evening of your time. You'd assist at the gala, manage logistics, investor names and details. Cultural considerations." His jaw tightened. "I'm aware this is highly unusual. I'm also aware I'm out of options. $1,000. Sophie needed new ballet shoes. The rent was due. The car needed repairs, but that wasn't why her heart was racing. Why me, Mr. Hall?" He looked at her for a long moment, really looked, and Claire felt something shift in the air between them, something neither of them was ready to name. "Because I've watched you, Miss Miller. For 18 months, I've walked past your desk, and I've seen you manage chaos with grace, solve problems before people know they exist, make everyone around you feel—" His voice dropped. "Feel like they matter. That's not a skill you can teach. That's a gift." Claire's breath caught. No one had ever called her gift anything but nice before. Charming, sweet, soft skills, David used to say. The kind that don't really count in the real world. But Elijah Hall was looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been too afraid to ask. "I need your gift, Miss Miller." He corrected himself. "I need you." 3 words. Simple. Impossible. I need you. Claire thought about her daughter, her mother, the bills, the safe, invisible life she'd built from the ruins of grief. She thought about David's voice in her head, always there, always whispering, "You're wonderful with people, Claire. But let's be honest. Maybe David had been wrong. Maybe being wonderful with people was exactly the kind of wonderful that mattered." She took a breath, nodded. "Yes, I'll help you." Something in his expression softened. Relief. Yes, but something else too. Something that made her skin warm and her pulse trip. "Thank you," he said quietly. And Clare Miller, invisible woman, realized she'd just made herself very, very seen. The next 24 hours blurred together like a fever dream. Claire stood in the dressing room of an upscale department store, staring at her reflection. The dress was simple, elegant, navy silk that fell to her knees, with a neckline that was sophisticated without being bold. It cost more than she made in a week. Her mother Dorothy stood behind her, hands on Claire's shoulders, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." "I look terrified." Dorothy squeezed gently. "You look like a woman who's about to do something brave." Claire's throat tightened. What if I mess this up? What if I say the wrong thing, or forget someone's name, or... Mom, what if I prove David was right, that I'm just nice? That nice isn't enough. Her mother turned her around, held her face in both hands. "David loved you, but he was wrong about this. Being able to connect with people, to make them feel valued and understood. That's not a soft skill, honey. That's power, real power, the kind that changes everything." Claire wanted to believe that. She did, but fear had roots that went deep. Her phone buzzed. A text from Elijah Hall. "A car will pick you up tomorrow at 6 p.m. Thank you again for doing this." She stared at the words, professional, distant, but her fingers trembled as she typed back, "I won't let you down." His response came faster than expected. "I know you won't." 3 words again. This time, they felt like trust. That evening, Claire sat on Sophie's bed, watching her daughter practice her ballet positions in front of the mirror. Sophie was all long limbs and determination, dark curls bouncing as she moved. "Mom, are you really going to a fancy party?" "I am, with my boss, to help him with some important meetings." Sophie turned, eyes wide with that particular brand of 10-year-old wisdom that always caught Claire off guard. "Is he nice?" Claire considered the question. Elijah Hall wasn't nice in any traditional sense. He didn't smile easily, didn't make small talk, rarely acknowledged anyone's existence beyond their functional purpose. But he'd asked for her help. He'd admitted he needed something he couldn't do alone. "I think he's trying to be," she said finally. Sophie nodded sagely. "Dad wasn't always nice either, but he loved you." The observation landed like a stone in still water. David had loved her. She'd never doubted that. But love and respect weren't always the same thing. He'd loved her while making her feel small, cherished her while dismissing what made her special. Elijah Hall barely knew her name a week ago, but today he'd called her gift. Maybe that mattered more than she wanted to admit. After Sophie fell asleep, Claire spread out her research on the dining room table. She'd printed investor profiles, cultural etiquette guides, company financials, highlighted names, made note cards, created a system. The lead investor was Hiroshi Tanaka, 58 years old, former engineer turned venture capitalist, traditional values, emphasis on relationships and long-term partnership, not just profit margins. His wife Keiko would attend, an artist, loved gardens and traditional tea ceremonies. Claire studied their photos, tried to imagine their voices, their concerns. What would make them trust Elijah? What would make them believe in his vision? Not data. They had all the data they needed. They needed to believe in the human being behind the technology. And Elijah Hall, brilliant as he was, didn't know how to let people see that. But maybe, just maybe, Claire could help them see what she was starting to see. A man who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten how to build bridges. A man who needed someone to show him the way back to his own humanity. She touched the fabric of her dress hanging on the closet door. Tomorrow night, she would step into a world that had always existed just beyond her reach. She would wear a beautiful dress and expensive shoes. She would smile at wealthy people and facilitate conversations that moved millions of dollars. And she would be, for one night, exactly who she'd always known she could be, if only she could silence David's voice long enough to believe it herself. The limousine arrived at exactly 6 p.m. Claire stood on the sidewalk outside her modest apartment building, her hand pressed to her stomach, trying to remember how to breathe. Sophie and Dorothy waved from the window above. Her daughter had insisted on doing her mother's makeup, applying lipstick with the careful concentration of a surgeon. "You look like a princess, Mommy. A real one." Claire didn't feel like a princess. She felt like a fraud, like Cinderella waiting for midnight, knowing the magic couldn't last. The driver opened the door, and there, in the back seat, was Elijah Hall. He wore a tuxedo, black and perfectly tailored. His hair was combed back, his jaw clean-shaven. He looked like he belonged in a magazine spread about powerful men who shaped the world. He also looked absolutely terrified. "Miss Miller," he said, his voice tight, "thank you for being punctual." Claire slid into the car, hyper-aware of the space between them. The leather seats, the soft lighting, the sudden intimacy of being alone with a man she barely knew but had observed for 18 months. "You're welcome, Mr. Hall." He was staring at her, really staring. And for the first time since David died, Claire felt seen not as a widow, not as a mother, not as a receptionist, but as a woman. "You look—" He stopped, tried again. "The dress is appropriate, professional. Thank you. You look nervous." His jaw tightened. "I don't do well at these events. Small talk, social niceties, reading between the lines. I'm not built for that." The honesty disarmed her. Most powerful men would never admit weakness. But Elijah Hall sat there in his perfect tuxedo, looking like a lost boy in a grown man's armor. "Everyone's afraid of something," she said gently. "You're afraid of this. I'm afraid of most things. I think that makes us human." He looked at her, then, really looked, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Two lonely people pretending to be fine, suddenly seeing their own reflection in someone else's eyes. The car pulled away from the curb, carrying them toward the gala, toward $200 million, toward a night that would change everything. Claire watched Seattle blur past the window. Somewhere in this city, there were women who belonged at events like this. Women who'd gone to the right schools, married the right men, never had to choose between groceries and ballet shoes. But tonight, she was the one sitting next to Elijah Hall. Tonight, she was the one he needed. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The hotel rose before them like a cathedral of glass and light. The Four Seasons, valet parking, red carpet, people in diamonds and designer labels flowing through golden doors. Claire's hands trembled. Elijah noticed Miss Miller. "Claire, you don't have to do this. I can find another way." She turned to him. His eyes were grey, she realized, storm cloud grey. Eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. "No," she said firmly. "You asked for my help. I'm going to help you. I don't want you to be uncomfortable." She almost laughed. "Mr. Hall, I've been uncomfortable for 2 years. Uncomfortable is my normal. But useful, needed, that's new, and I think—" She paused, surprised by her own honesty. "I think I'd like to see if I'm good at it." His expression shifted, softened. "You're already good at it. You just don't know it yet." The door opened. Cool evening air rushed in, carrying the sound of music and laughter and the weight of expectations. Claire stepped out of the car, into the light, into the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she was more than everyone had ever told her she was. Elijah appeared beside her, offering his arm. The gesture was formal, old-fashioned, but his hand shook slightly when she took it. Two terrified people, pretending to be brave. Together, they walked toward the doors, toward the gala, toward the moment that would prove whether Clare Miller was truly invisible or whether she'd just been waiting for someone to look closely enough to see her. The ballroom was a cathedral of opulence. Crystal chandeliers caught the light and scattered it like stars, tables draped in cream silk, centerpieces of white orchids and cherry blossoms. Waiters in white gloves carrying champagne that probably cost more than Claire's monthly rent. She'd never felt so out of place in her life. She'd also never felt so alive. Elijah's hand was still on her elbow, a light touch, almost tentative. She could feel his tension radiating through that single point of contact. This man, who commanded boardrooms and revolutionized industries, was afraid of a party. The irony wasn't lost on her. "There," he murmured, nodding toward a distinguished couple near the bar, Hiroshi and Keiko Tanaka. They just arrived. Claire studied them. Hiroshi was exactly as his photo suggested, composed, elegant, watchful. He wore his tuxedo like a second skin, completely at ease. His wife Keiko stood beside him in a stunning kimono-inspired gown, her silver hair swept up in an intricate style. But it was the small detail that caught Claire's attention. On Hiroshi's lapel, a tiny pin, cherry blossoms, delicate and pink and clearly meaningful. She filed it away. Details mattered. David had been wrong about a lot of things, but he'd been right about one. Claire noticed everything. "Mr. Hall," she said quietly, "before we approach them, I need you to understand something. These people don't need more data about clean energy. They already believe in the technology. What they need is to believe in you." He stiffened. "I'm not good at that. You don't have to be good at it. You just have to be real. Show them why you care about this, not the profit margins, the why that wakes you up at 3 a.m. and won't let you rest." His eyes found hers. There was vulnerability there, raw and unguarded. "How do you know I wake up at 3 a.m.? Because I do too," she said simply. "Different reasons, same insomnia." The admission hung between them. Two strangers, suddenly not strangers at all. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled, small, barely there, but real. "Okay," he said. "Let's go meet them." They crossed the ballroom together. Claire was intensely aware of eyes following them, board members she recognized, executives who'd never once acknowledged her existence at the reception desk. They were looking at her now, trying to place her, wondering who this woman was on Elijah Hall's arm. Let them wonder. She was too busy trying not to trip in her heels. "Mr. Tanaka," Elijah said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." Hiroshi's handshake was firm but brief. "Of course. Your technology is impressive. Your presentation last month was thorough." The word thorough landed like a criticism disguised as a compliment. Claire felt Elijah tense beside her. "Time to step in, Mr. Tanaka, Mrs. Tanaka," she said warmly, including Keiko in her smile. "I'm Clare Miller. I work with Mr. Hall. I wanted to say that pin you're wearing is beautiful." Hiroshi glanced down at the cherry blossom pin, surprised she'd noticed. "My daughter gave it to me," he said carefully, "when she graduated from university. It's from Kyoto, her favorite place." Claire's heart squeezed. "My daughter is 10. She's discovering her favorite places too. Right now, it's the library and the ballet studio, and anywhere her grandmother makes cookies." Keiko laughed. A genuine, delighted sound. "How wonderful. Daughters keep us young and make us old at the same time." "Yes, yes," Claire agreed. "Exactly that." And just like that, the wall came down. A tiny crack, but a crack nonetheless. They talked for 5 minutes. Not about technology or investments, about daughters, about the peculiar joy and terror of watching children grow, about the small rituals that make a house a home. Elijah said almost nothing, but he was learning. Claire could feel it, watching, observing, seeing how connection happened not through data, but through the simple act of recognizing another person's humanity. When they moved on to greet other guests, Elijah leaned close to her ear. "How did you do that?" His breath was warm against her skin. Claire's pulse jumped. "I just saw them, really saw them, not as investors, as people. A father who loves his daughter, a mother who understands what it means to worry." She turned to look at him. Their faces were inches apart. "That's all anyone wants, Mr. Hall, to be seen." Something flickered in his storm-grey eyes, something that made her forget how to breathe. "Teach me," he said quietly. And Clare Miller realized she wasn't just helping him save a company, she was helping him find his way back to being human. The question was, would he do the same for her? The cocktail hour unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance, and Claire discovered something extraordinary about herself. She was good at this, really good. Not just competent, not just adequate. She was in her element, moving through the crowd with a grace she didn't know she possessed. Every conversation became an opportunity, every introduction a connection. "Mr. Yamamoto," she said, approaching a silver-haired gentleman standing alone by the window, "I noticed you admiring the view. Are you familiar with Seattle?" He turned, clearly surprised to be addressed. "First time, actually. Beautiful city. It is. The mountains especially. Do you have mountains near your home in Osaka?" His face lit up. "You know I'm from Osaka, your tie pin. That's the symbol of Osaka Castle, isn't it?" His surprise transformed into delight. "Yes. Yes, it is. Most people don't recognize it." Claire smiled. "My daughter is fascinated by castles. We've been reading about them together. Japanese castles are her favorites. The architecture, the history. She'd love to visit Osaka someday. You should bring her. I would be happy to recommend the best places to see, and just like that, another bridge built, another human connection made." Across the room, she caught Elijah watching her. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, wonder maybe, or confusion, like he was watching someone speak a language he'd never learned. Claire excused herself and found him standing near the bar, nursing what looked like sparkling water. "You're not drinking," she observed. "I need to be sharp for the presentation." He paused. "You're doing remarkably well. How do you make it look so effortless?" "It's not effortless. I'm terrified." "But everyone here is just a person. They have families, hobbies, things they love. If you can find that common ground, the rest follows." His grey eyes studied her face. "You believe that people are fundamentally good, don't you?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I used to. Then I learned that charm can be a weapon, that people use connection to manipulate. My father was brilliant at it. He could make anyone believe anything. And he destroyed lives with that gift." The raw honesty stole her breath. "Oh, Elijah." His name slipped out before she could stop it. Not Mr. Hall, Elijah. And the intimacy of it hung between them like a confession. He noticed, didn't correct her. "My father could sell anything," he continued, his voice low and rough with old pain. "But behind closed doors, he was a fraud, a liar. He bankrupted families with his schemes, destroyed my mother's faith in everything good. When he died, I promised myself I would never be like him, never use charm, never rely on anything but hard facts and honest work." Claire's heart broke for the boy he'd been, the child who'd learned to distrust the very thing that made people human. "Your father used connection to deceive," she said gently. "I use it to honor. There's a difference, is there?" "Yes." She stepped closer, not quite touching him, but close enough that she could feel the heat of him, the tension. "Your father made people feel special to take something from them. I try to make people feel special because they are. That's not manipulation. That's just seeing the truth." He looked at her like she was speaking a foreign language, like she was offering him something he'd spent his whole life refusing to believe existed. Before he could respond, Keiko Tanaka appeared beside them, her elegant gown rustling softly. "Miss Miller," she said warmly, "my husband and I would like you to sit with us at dinner, if Mr. Hall can spare you." "Of course," Elijah said, though Claire heard the reluctance in his voice. "She's here to facilitate connections." Keiko smiled knowingly. "Yes, she's very good at that." As the older woman glided away, Claire turned back to Elijah. She wanted to say something, wanted to tell him that his father's sins weren't his to carry, that learning to trust again wasn't weakness. But the dinner chime sounded, and the moment slipped away like water through her fingers. Her phone buzzed in her small clutch. A text from Dorothy. Sophie fell asleep reading. Left the light on for you. She's so proud of you, honey. We both are. Claire's throat tightened. She was here, in this beautiful ballroom, wearing a dress that cost more than her rent, talking to millionaires and venture capitalists. But the people who mattered most were in a small apartment, believing in her. She had to make this worth it. She had to prove that sometimes Cinderella doesn't just go to the ball. Sometimes she saves the kingdom. Dinner was an exercise in controlled chaos. Claire sat between Keiko Tanaka and a German investor named Friedrich Weber. Across the table, Hiroshi engaged in polite conversation with a board member. Elijah was 3 seats down, looking increasingly uncomfortable as the small talk swirled around him. The food was exquisite, 7 courses, each one a work of art. Claire barely tasted any of it. She was too busy reading the room, gauging reactions, noting body language. Something was wrong. The investors were polite, engaged, but there was a distance Claire recognized. They were evaluating, not embracing, assessing, not committing. Keiko leaned close to her. Mr. Hall is very intelligent, yes, very, Claire confirmed, but he is not comfortable. Keiko's observation was gentle, not critical. In Japan, we say a person must have both knowledge and heart. One without the other is incomplete. He has heart, Claire said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. He just doesn't know how to show it. Keiko patted her hand. Perhaps you can teach him. The words settled over Claire like a blessing or a prophecy. After dessert, before the presentation was scheduled to begin, Claire excused herself to the restroom. She needed a moment to breathe, to center herself, to remember why she was here. The ladies' lounge was all marble and gold fixtures. She stood at the mirror, checking her makeup, trying to calm her racing heart. The door opened. A woman entered. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of polished confidence that came from never having to worry about anything. She glanced at Claire. You're with Elijah Hall, right? I work with him, yes. The woman's smile was sharp. Good luck with that. He's brilliant, but he couldn't sell water in a desert. We've been trying to get funding from the Tanaka group for months. He'll probably tank this deal, like he's tanked every other partnership opportunity. Too cold, too technical, no emotional intelligence whatsoever. The words landed like slaps. Claire felt her defenses rising, fierce and protective. You're wrong, she said quietly. The woman raised an eyebrow. Excuse me, about Mr. Hall. He's not cold, he's careful. There's a difference. And maybe if more people took the time to understand why, instead of just judging him, they'd see what I see. And what do you see? A man who's been hurt, who built walls to stay safe, who's trying, despite everything, to do something good in the world. Claire met the woman's eyes steadily. That's worth more than charm. That's worth everything. The woman studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. For real this time. Maybe you're right. Maybe he just needed the right person to see him. After the woman left, Claire gripped the edge of the sink. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. She'd just defended Elijah Hall like he was hers to defend. When had that happened? When had the distant CEO become someone she wanted to protect? She checked her phone. A text from Sophie, sent hours ago. Good night, Mum. You're going to be amazing. I know it. Claire closed her eyes, breathed, centered. Then she walked back into the ballroom, ready for whatever came next. The presentation began at 8:30. The lights dimmed. A screen descended. Elijah took his position at the podium, looking every inch the brilliant CEO. Confident, prepared, knowledgeable, and utterly, completely disconnected. Claire felt it in the first 30 seconds. the shift in the room's energy, the way the investors' postures changed from open to guarded, the subtle exchanging of glances. Elijah was presenting data, charts, projections, technical specifications. Everything was accurate, thorough, impressive, and it was all wrong. He was talking at them, not to them, sharing information, not building relationship. It was a lecture, not a conversation, a transaction, not a partnership. Claire's pulse quickened. She could see it unraveling in real time. Hiroshi's face growing more neutral. Keiko's gentle disappointment. The German investor checking his phone. Elijah kept going, oblivious. More graphs, more numbers, more proof that he was brilliant and thorough and completely missing the point. The investors didn't need convincing about the technology. They needed to believe in the man behind it, and Elijah wasn't letting them see that man at all. He was hiding, using data as armor, keeping them at a distance because distance felt safe. But safe wasn't going to save this company. Claire glanced at the board members in the back. They looked worried. One was whispering urgently into his phone. Another had his head in his hands. This wasn't just failing. This was a disaster. Elijah reached his conclusion. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm confident the data speaks for itself. Are there any questions? The silence that followed was deafening. Hiroshi stood slowly. Very thorough, Mr. Hall. Thank you. We will discuss among ourselves and be in touch. The words were polite. The meaning was clear. They were done. Other investors began standing, gathering their things. The body language was universal. Meeting over. Interest withdrawn. Time to leave. Claire watched Elijah's face. He looked confused. He'd presented everything perfectly. Why were they leaving? Because perfect wasn't enough. Because data without humanity was just noise. Because these people wanted to invest in a person, not a spreadsheet. And Elijah Hall had just proven he couldn't be that person. Claire's mind raced. She had maybe 30 seconds before the investors left the room. 30 seconds to decide if she would stay silent and safe or step forward and risk everything. David's voice echoed in her head. You're wonderful with people, Claire, but that's not real power. But what if it was? What if her gift was exactly the power this moment needed? Hiroshi moved toward the exit. Keiko followed. Others began filing toward the doors. Claire stood. Her legs felt like water. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every survival instinct screamed at her to sit down, stay quiet, stay invisible. But she'd been invisible for 2 years, for 38 years, really. And where had that gotten her? Mr. Tanaka, she said. Her voice carried across the room. Clear, steady, stronger than she felt. May I say something before you go? Every head turned. The room held its breath. Hiroshi stopped, turned. His expression was neutral, polite. Of course, Miss Miller. Claire stepped forward. She didn't have a plan, didn't have talking points or data or anything, but the truth burning in her chest. I noticed your cherry blossom pin earlier. You said your daughter gave it to you. From Kyoto. He nodded slowly, clearly uncertain where this was going. My daughter is 10. Her name is Sophie. And right now, she's at home, probably already asleep, dreaming about ballet and books and all the things that make her world feel big and full of possibility. Claire's voice softened. Before I left tonight, she told me something. She said, Mom, you're going to be amazing, I know it. The room was silent, everyone watching, waiting. Claire continued. She didn't say that because of the data Mr. Hall presented. She doesn't understand clean energy technology or investment returns or market projections. She said it because she believes in something simpler. She believes that when good people try to do good things, the world gets a little bit better. She took a breath, met Hiroshi's eyes, and that's what I see when I look at Elijah Hall. Not just a brilliant engineer, not just a CEO, I see a man who wakes up at 3 in the morning because he can't stop thinking about how to make the world cleaner for children like mine, like yours. Something flickered in Hiroshi's face. Claire pressed on. You said your daughter loves Kyoto, that it's her favorite place. Mr. Hall has never told you this, but he chose Seattle for his company headquarters because of the cherry trees in the university district. He drives past them every morning. He says they remind him that beautiful things can bloom even in the hardest conditions. Elijah's sharp intake of breath was audible. She'd guessed, intuited, but his expression told her she was right. This company isn't just about profit margins, Claire said. It's about a man who lost both his parents too young, who watched his father destroy trust and decided to spend his life rebuilding it, who's not good with words or charm or the kinds of things that impress people in rooms like this, but who has something more valuable: integrity, purpose, and a genuine desire to leave the world better than he found it. Keiko had tears in her eyes. Hiroshi remained still, listening. Data can't tell you that, Claire said quietly. Spreadsheets can't show you a person's heart, but I see it. Every day, I watch this man work twice as hard as anyone else because he doesn't trust shortcuts, because he believes in doing things right, even when right is harder. And yes, he's not warm. Yes, he struggles with connection. But maybe that's because the first person who taught him about connection taught him it was a weapon. She paused. Let that sink in. My late husband was a brilliant man. A professor. He could speak 5 languages and quote philosophy and make a room full of intellectuals hang on his every word. But you know what he couldn't do? He couldn't make the barista at our coffee shop feel like her day mattered. He couldn't remember the name of our building superintendent. He couldn't see value in anything that didn't come with a degree or a title. Her voice broke slightly, and I loved him. But I spent 15 years being told that what I was good at didn't really count, that being kind, being perceptive, being able to connect with people was nice, but not important. Claire looked at Elijah. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't name. Awe, gratitude, something deeper. Tonight, I learned something, she said. Those things do count. They count more than almost anything, because business isn't about data, it's about people trusting people. And you can't build trust without seeing each other as human beings first. She turned back to Hiroshi. Your daughter gave you that pin because she loves you, because somewhere in her life you taught her that beautiful moments matter, that tradition and nature and connection to something bigger than ourselves is worth preserving. That's what Mr. Hall is trying to do. Preserve something beautiful. Build something that lasts. Not for profit, for purpose. The silence stretched, fragile, electric. Then Hiroshi did something unexpected. He smiled, not a polite smile, a real one, warm and genuine and full of something that looked like respect. Miss Miller, he said slowly. What is your role at Cleantech Solutions? The question hung in the air like a trap or a test. Claire could lie, could claim a title she didn't have, could pretend to be something more impressive than a receptionist who'd been asked to help for one evening. But hadn't she just said that integrity mattered, that being real was more valuable than being impressive? I'm the receptionist, she said simply. Mr. Hall needed help tonight. I said yes. Keiko laughed, a bright, delighted sound. The receptionist? Claire felt her face warm. Yes, ma'am. Hiroshi looked at Elijah. Your receptionist just did what you could not. She made me understand not just your technology, but your heart. He paused. That is rare, very rare. Elijah found his voice. It's her gift. He looked at Claire when he said it, his expression open, vulnerable, real. She has a gift for seeing people, for making them feel understood. I brought her tonight because I knew I couldn't do this alone. The admission cost him. Claire could see it, but he said it anyway. Hiroshi nodded slowly, then addressed the room. "We will stay, we will hear more, but not tonight. Tonight has given us much to think about." He approached Claire, extended his hand. "Thank you, Miss Miller, for your honesty, for your courage, and for showing us that clean tech solutions value substance over performance. That is the kind of company we want to support." His handshake was warm, firm, the grip of respect between equals. Other investors approached. Conversations resumed. The energy in the room transformed from funeral to possibility. Claire excused herself as politely as she could and escaped to the hallway. Her legs were shaking, her hands trembling. The adrenaline that had carried her through was draining away, leaving her hollow and dizzy. She leaned against the wall, pressed her palm to her racing heart. What had she just done? Stepped out of her place, spoken when she wasn't asked, revealed herself completely. Saved the company, apparently. But at what cost? Elijah found her 10 minutes later. She was standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the Seattle skyline. The city glittered below, beautiful and indifferent to the small human dramas playing out in its towers. He stood beside her, didn't speak for a long moment, just existed in her space, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, the solid reality of his presence. "You saved us," he finally said. His voice was rough, raw. "I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me, Claire." He turned to face her. She kept her eyes on the city. "I have to know. Everything you said in there. About me driving past the cherry trees. About why I chose Seattle. How did you know?" She finally looked at him. "I didn't, I guessed. But I've watched you for 18 months, Mr. Hall. I know you take the long way to the office every spring. I know you stop at that coffee shop near the university. I know you're not late on those days because you're indifferent. You're late because you're standing under cherry blossoms, remembering that beautiful things exist." His eyes glistened. "No one has ever seen you?" She finished gently. "I see you. I've always seen you." The confession hung between them, heavy with meaning neither was ready to name. Elijah reached out. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with a tenderness that stole her breath. "What you did in there, that wasn't just saving a business deal. You gave me something I've spent my whole life refusing to believe could be real." "What's that?" "Proof that connection can heal instead of harm, that being seen doesn't have to mean being betrayed." He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "You showed me that vulnerability can be strength." Claire's heart was a wild bird in her chest. She could smell his cologne, cedar and something clean, could feel the slight tremor in his hand against her skin. For 2 years, she'd been a widow, a mother, a survivor. But in that moment, she was a woman, being seen by a man who'd forgotten how to see, and it terrified her how right it felt. Elijah. The ballroom doors opened. Board members spilled out, talking urgently. The spell shattered. They stepped apart. Back to professional distance, back to employer and receptionist, back to the roles that kept them safe. But something had shifted. Some line had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. "I should go," Claire said. "It's late. Sophie will worry." "Of course, the car is waiting." He hesitated. "Claire, about tomorrow." She waited, hoping, fearing. "I'd like to talk. About what happened tonight. About—" he struggled with the words. "About what this means." "For the company?" she asked. His eyes met hers. "For us, 2 words. Simple. Impossible. Us. Was there an us? Could there be a CEO and a receptionist, a widowed mother, and a man who'd built walls so high he'd almost forgotten what sunlight felt like? "I'd like that," she heard herself say. He smiled, small, real, beautiful. "Tomorrow, then." She nodded. Tomorrow. But tomorrow would bring something neither of them expected. Tomorrow would show them that seeing someone wasn't the same as valuing them, that using someone's gift wasn't the same as honoring their humanity. Tomorrow would break Claire's heart in a way she hadn't known was possible. The limousine ride home felt like floating. Claire pressed her face against the cool window, watching Seattle blur past, trying to process everything that had happened. She'd spoken in front of 50 people, defended a man she barely knew, revealed herself completely, and somehow, impossibly, it had worked. Her phone buzzed. A text from Hiroshi Tanaka's assistant, formal, polite, but clear. Mr. Tanaka would like to schedule a follow-up meeting. He was very impressed by your presentation tonight. Your insight into cultural partnership is exactly what cleantech needs. Claire read it 3 times. Her presentation, her insight. She'd done that. Not the receptionist, not the widow, not the woman who'd been dismissed and overlooked. Her. The car pulled up to her apartment building. The driver opened her door, treating her with the same respect he'd shown when picking her up. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. My pleasure, Miss Miller. You have a good evening." She climbed the stairs to her second-floor apartment, her heels clicking against the worn linoleum. The building was quiet, working families asleep. Single mothers like her collapsed after long days, saving strength for tomorrow's battles. Claire opened her door carefully. Dorothy was asleep on the couch, a book open on her chest. Sophie's bedroom door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the hallway. She checked on her daughter first. Sophie was sprawled across her bed, one arm thrown over her stuffed rabbit, her mouth slightly open, beautiful and innocent and everything good in Claire's world. "I did it, baby," she whispered. "I did what you said. I was amazing." She kissed Sophie's forehead, breathed in the sweet smell of her shampoo. This was what mattered, not galas or investments or wealthy men with storm-grey eyes. This child, this life, this love. She gently woke Dorothy. Her mother blinked awake, immediately alert the way mothers always are. How was it? Claire sank onto the couch beside her, told her everything. The presentation, Elijah's failure, her intervention, the words that had poured out of her like truth she hadn't known she was holding. Dorothy listened, didn't interrupt, just held her daughter's hand and let her spill it all out. When Claire finished, Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You know what your father told me the day you were born?" Claire shook her head. "He said, this baby is going to change the world, not with noise or force, with the ability to make people feel like they matter." Dorothy's eyes filled. "And you did, honey. Tonight you did exactly that." The tears Claire had been holding back finally came. Not sad tears. Something else. Release, maybe. Or recognition. The tears of someone who'd been carrying something heavy for so long, she'd forgotten what it felt like to set it down. Her mother held her, the way mothers do, the way Claire held Sophie, the way women hold each other when words aren't enough. After Dorothy left, Claire changed out of her beautiful dress, hung it carefully in her closet. It would probably never be worn again, but she couldn't bring herself to return it. It was proof, evidence that tonight had been real. She washed her face, brushed her teeth, pulled on her comfortable pajamas, climbed into her own bed. But sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept replaying moments. Elijah's hand on her face, his voice saying for us, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious he'd been searching for without knowing it existed. David had never looked at her like that. He'd loved her, yes, but his love had come with conditions. Be sweeter, be quieter, be less intense about things that don't matter. Elijah looked at her like her intensity was exactly what mattered. She reached for her phone, typed out a message before she could overthink it. "Thank you for tonight, for trusting me, for letting me help." His response came 30 seconds later, like he'd been waiting, hoping. "Thank you for seeing what I couldn't show, for being brave when I wasn't, for reminding me that people are worth the risk." Another message followed immediately. Sleep well, Claire. Tomorrow we talk. She stared at his words, at her first name in his text, at the promise implicit in tomorrow. Something was beginning. Something fragile and terrifying and full of possibility. She just didn't know yet that tomorrow wouldn't bring the conversation she hoped for. Tomorrow would bring a reminder of every lesson she'd learned the hard way. That being useful wasn't the same as being valued. That being seen wasn't the same as being understood. That sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who never meant to hurt us at all. Claire set her phone on her nightstand, closed her eyes, and let herself, for just one night, believe in the possibility that maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time someone would see her gift and honor it, not use it, honor it. Tomorrow would teach her how wrong she was. But tonight, she could still hope. Morning came too quickly. Claire woke to Sophie jumping on her bed, already dressed in her school uniform, her dark curls bouncing with excitement. Mom, Dorothy says you were amazing last night. Tell me everything. Claire pulled her daughter into a hug, breathing in the simple joy of her. After the intensity of last night, this felt like coming home, like remembering what actually mattered. I helped Mr. Hall with a big meeting, that's all. Dorothy says you made a speech, that everyone clapped. Claire laughed. It wasn't quite like that, sweetheart, but it was good. You helped? Yes, baby, I helped. Sophie pulled back, her young face suddenly serious. Dad would be proud of you, I know he would. The words landed softly, gently. David had been gone for 2 years, but Sophie still carried him with her, still invoked him in moments that mattered. I think he would too, Claire said. Even though she wasn't entirely sure, David had never really understood what she did, never valued the soft skills he'd dismissed as unimportant, but maybe he would have learned. Maybe, given time, he would have seen what Elijah was starting to see. She'd never know. After dropping Sophie at school, Claire headed to the office. She hadn't slept well, kept replaying the evening, Elijah's hand on her face, his words, "For us." What did that mean? What could it mean? The reception desk felt different when she sat down, or maybe she was different. She'd left yesterday as one person and returned as another. Same job, same chair, same phone lines. But she wasn't the invisible woman anymore. People noticed her this morning. Marcus from accounting stopped to say he'd heard about the gala. The marketing director paused to thank her for stepping up. Even the CFO nodded at her with something like respect. Word had traveled. By 10 a.m., 3 people had asked if she was moving to a different position. By 11, someone from HR wanted to schedule a meeting about career development opportunities. Claire answered politely. Deflected. She didn't know what any of this meant yet. At noon, her phone rang. Internal extension, Elijah's office. Her heart jumped. This was it, the conversation he'd promised. The moment where they'd define what for us actually meant. Miss Miller, could you come up to my office? Whenever you have a moment, his voice was formal, professional. But there was something underneath. Warmth, maybe, or anticipation. Of course, Mr. Hall. I'll be right there. She checked her reflection in her compact mirror, fixed her hair, wished she'd worn something nicer than her usual navy dress. But she hadn't known, hadn't expected. The elevator ride up felt eternal. Her palms were sweating, her heart racing. Ridiculous, really. She was 38 years old, a widow, a mother, not some teenager with a crush. But her body didn't seem to care about logic. Elijah's assistant waved her through. The corner office was all windows and clean lines, a desk that probably cost more than her car, bookshelves lined with industry journals and engineering texts, and Elijah, standing by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city. He turned when she entered, smiled, that rare, real smile she was learning to recognize. Claire, thank you for coming. Just Claire, not Miss Miller. The intimacy of it warmed her. Of course. You wanted to talk about last night. Yes. He gestured to the seating area, 2 leather chairs facing each other. Please, sit. She did. He sat across from her, close enough that their knees almost touched. I've been thinking about what happened, he began, about what you did, your intervention, your speech, the way you connected with the Tanaka group. He leaned forward. It was extraordinary. Truly. Thank you. I just said what was true. That's exactly the point. You saw truth I couldn't articulate. You utilized emotional intelligence in a way that transformed the entire dynamic of the negotiation. Utilized. The word landed strangely, clinical, like describing a tool. Claire felt the first whisper of unease. Your tactical deployment of cultural touchpoints was remarkably effective, he continued. The way you identified Hiroshi's personal values and leveraged them to create rapport. That's sophisticated strategy. Leveraged strategy. David's voice stirred in her memory. You're wonderful with people, Claire, but that's not real intellect. No, this was different. Elijah wasn't David. He saw her. He'd said so last night. I want to properly compensate you for what you did, Elijah said. I know we agreed on $1,000, but given the result, given how instrumental you were in securing this deal, I think $5,000 is more appropriate. He pulled out an envelope, placed it on the small table between them. Claire stared at it. $5,000, life-changing money, money that could fix her car, pay off credit cards, get Sophie that advanced ballet program she'd been too afraid to even consider. But something felt wrong, horribly wrong. Mr. Hall, Elijah, please. His smile was warm. We're past formality, don't you think? Were they really? The way you executed that intervention, he continued, clearly pleased with himself for recognizing her worth. It demonstrated a level of social engineering I've never seen. The personal anecdotes, the cultural awareness, the emotional appeal. You deployed each element with precision. It was like watching a masterclass in human psychology, social engineering, deployed, precision. Each word a small cut. Death by 1,000 clinical observations. I'm considering creating a consulting position, he went on. Someone who can analyze interpersonal dynamics, provide strategic guidance on relationship building. Your skill set is clearly valuable, monetizable, even monetizable. The word echoed in Claire's head, bounced around her skull like a bullet she couldn't dodge. He was praising her, valuing her work, offering her money and opportunity and recognition. And every word made her feel smaller, because he wasn't seeing her gift. He was categorizing it, analyzing it, reducing her humanity to tactics and deployment and leveraged touchpoints. She'd bared her soul last night, told him about David, about her daughter, about being dismissed and overlooked and learning to value herself, and he'd turned it into a case study in effective strategy. Mr. Hall, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the crack forming in her chest. Do you remember what I said last night about why I connect with people? Of course, you talked about seeing their humanity. It was compelling, not true, not heartfelt, not real, compelling, like a good argument, like effective rhetoric. I didn't say those things to be compelling, she said. I said them because they were true. Because I believe that people aren't puzzles to solve or strategies to deploy. They're human beings who deserve to be seen and valued and honored. Exactly. And you do that better than anyone I've ever met. It's a remarkable talent, skill, gift. All words that sounded like praise, that were meant as praise, but felt like being patted on the head and told, "Good girl, you did your trick well." Claire stood. Her legs felt unsteady, but she stood anyway. Thank you for the offer, Mr. Hall, but I don't think I can accept it. Confusion flickered across his face. I don't understand. Is the amount insufficient? I can increase it. It's not about the amount. Then what? He stood too, genuinely bewildered. Claire, you saved this company. You deserve to be compensated, recognized. Is that what you think I want? Compensation? Of course, you're a single mother. You work hard. You need security. This money could change your life. He meant well. That was the terrible part. He genuinely meant well, thought he was doing right by her. But he'd done exactly what David had done, reduced her to her function, valued her utility, praised her performance, without ever actually seeing her. I don't need your money, she said. The original 1,000 is sufficient, as we agreed, but she picked up the envelope, held it out. This isn't payment for services rendered, Mr. Hall. This is you trying to quantify something that can't be quantified. Trying to pay for something that was never about payment. Then what was it about? The question hung between them, loaded, dangerous. What was it about? Standing up for him, speaking from her heart, showing him that connection could heal? Or had it been about the way he looked at her, the way his hand felt against her face, the promise of for us? I thought it was about partnership, she said softly. About two people seeing each other, really seeing each other. But I see now that's not what this is. You're not making sense. No. She met his eyes. You're not understanding. And that's the problem. She set the envelope on his desk, then walked to the door. Claire, wait. His voice stopped her. I'm trying to do the right thing here. I'm trying to value what you contributed. I know. That's what makes this so much worse. What do you mean? She turned back. Looked at the man who'd touched her face last night like she was something precious, who'd said for us like it meant something, who'd made her believe for one stupid, hopeful moment that maybe someone finally saw her. My husband used to tell me I was wonderful with people, she said. Used to praise my social skills, make me feel good about being nice. And then, in the same breath, he'd dismiss it, say it wasn't real intelligence. Wasn't valuable the way his work was valuable. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? You just called my humanity a tactic, my vulnerability a strategy. You praised me for deploying emotions like weapons. She felt tears building but refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of him. You think you're different from him, but you're doing the same thing. Just with different words. The color drained from his face. Claire, that's not... I thought you saw me, she interrupted. Last night when you touched my face, when you said we needed to talk. I thought maybe you understood that I wasn't performing, that I was just being real, being myself. I do understand that. No, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't be trying to pay me for it. You wouldn't be analyzing it like a case study. You wouldn't be talking about monetizing my gift. Her voice broke on the last word. Gift. He'd called it that yesterday. Now it was a skill set, a deployable asset. The elevator dinged in the hallway. Voices. People. Claire straightened her shoulders, wiped her eyes quickly, put her professional mask back in place. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Hall. I hope the deal with the Tanaka group works out. I'm sure it will. She walked to the door. Claire, please. His voice was desperate, confused. I don't understand what I did wrong. She paused. Hand on the doorframe. Didn't turn around. I know, that's the problem. Then she left, walked to the elevator, pressed the button, stood there with perfect posture and a crumbling heart, waiting for the doors to open. They did. She stepped in, pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, she saw Elijah standing in his office doorway, staring after her, looking lost. Good, she thought viciously. Let him feel lost. Let him understand what it's like to reach for something and find only air. The elevator descended, 14 floors, each one a small death. By the time she reached the lobby, Clare Miller had rebuilt her walls, reinforced her armor, remembered every lesson she'd learned the hard way. Being useful wasn't the same as being valued. Being seen wasn't the same as being understood, and sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who never meant to hurt us at all. She sat down at her reception desk, logged into her computer, answered the phone when it rang. "Good morning, Clean Tech Solutions. How may I help you?" Invisible again, safe again, alone again. But this time, it hurt so much worse, because now she knew what she was missing. Now she'd tasted what it felt like to be truly seen, and she'd learned once again that seeing and valuing were two different things entirely. Elijah sat in the back of the limousine, watching Seattle's lights blur past the window. The meeting with the Tanaka group had gone perfectly. The contract was being drawn up. $200 million secured. His company saved. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt hollow. The car turned onto Fifth Avenue, glass towers reaching for a sky too dark to see. Inside those buildings, thousands of people worked and dreamed and fought for their futures. He'd spent 20 years becoming one of them, building his empire, proving he was nothing like his father, and somewhere in that climb, he'd become exactly what he'd been running from. Not a fraud, not a liar. Something worse, maybe. Someone so afraid of being hurt that he'd forgotten how to hurt others, so focused on protecting himself that he couldn't see when he was wounding someone else. Claire's voice echoed in his mind. "I thought you saw me." He had seen her. Hadn't he? He'd recognized her gift, valued her contribution, offered her compensation and opportunity. What more could he have done? But even as he asked the question, he knew the answer. He could have treated her like a person instead of a problem solved. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. "The board wants to schedule a celebration dinner. Thursday work." Celebration. Yes, they'd won. Against all odds, they'd secured the funding that would take Clean Tech Solutions into the next decade. He'd done what everyone said was impossible. Claire had done it, and he'd paid her like she was a consultant, analyzed her humanity like it was a case study, praised her vulnerability like it was a tactic she'd deployed. God, what had he done? The car pulled up to his building. The doorman opened his door with practiced deference. "Good evening, Mr. Hall." "Successful evening?" "Yes, thank you." The lobby was all marble and expensive lighting. His footsteps echoed as he crossed to the elevator, up to the 23rd floor, down the quiet hallway to his penthouse. He unlocked the door, stepped into silence. The apartment was immaculate, professionally decorated, every surface clean, every object in its place, like a magazine spread for successful living, like a monument to everything he'd achieved, like a mausoleum for a life he'd never actually lived. Elijah dropped his keys on the entry table, loosened his tie, walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Down there, in one of those smaller buildings, in one of those modest neighborhoods, Claire was probably tucking Sophie into bed, reading her a story, kissing her forehead, being someone's entire world. When was the last time Elijah had been anyone's world? When had anyone looked at him the way Claire looked at her daughter, with that fierce, protective, unconditional love? His mother had, once, before his father's schemes had destroyed her faith in everything, before the stress had put her in an early grave, leaving Elijah alone at 15 with nothing but his intellect and his anger. He'd built walls, high ones, told himself that logic and reason were enough, that needing people was weakness, that the only person you could trust was yourself. And then Clare Miller had walked into that gala and demolished every certainty he'd spent decades building. She hadn't done it with logic or reason. She'd done it with something simpler and far more dangerous. She'd done it by being real, by showing him that connection didn't have to be manipulation, that vulnerability could be strength, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let someone see you. He'd seen her. He had watched her work magic with people, transform a failing presentation into a triumph, save his company with nothing but her truth. But seeing wasn't enough. Understanding was, And he'd failed to understand the most important thing, that she hadn't done any of it for money or recognition or career advancement. She'd done it because she cared about him, about his company, about doing something good in the world. And he'd reduced it all to tactics and deployment and monetizable skills. Elijah pulled out his phone, stared at her number. His thumb hovered over the call button. What would he even say? "I'm sorry I treated your humanity like a spreadsheet. Sorry I praised you for being strategic when you were just being yourself. Sorry I made you feel exactly the way your late husband made you feel." The phone rang in his hand. He answered without checking the caller ID. Elijah. It was Jennifer, his assistant, calling from the hospital. "I heard about the gala. Heard it went well. Thanks to Clare Miller." "Yes." Jennifer's voice was knowing. "Sounds like you owe her more than money. I offered her $5,000. She refused it." "Of course she did." Jennifer laughed, but not unkindly. "Elijah, do you know why I've worked for you for 3 years? Because I pay well? No. Because you're honest. Because you do what you say you'll do. Because in a world full of people who'll say anything to get ahead, you're someone who means what he says." She paused. "But you're also someone who thinks every problem has a logical solution. And some things can't be solved with logic." "Like what?" "Like the human heart." The words landed heavily, settled into his chest like stones. "Claire told you she thought you saw her," Jennifer continued. "Did you tell her she was right?" "I thought she knew." "Elijah," Jennifer's voice was gentle, "you can't assume people know they're valued. You have to tell them, show them. Make it clear that they matter, not for what they do, but for who they are." After they hung up, Elijah stood at the window for a long time, watching the city, thinking about a woman who'd showed him more courage in one evening than he'd demonstrated in 45 years. Tomorrow, he would fix this. Tomorrow, he would find the words. Tomorrow, he would show Clare Miller that he understood the difference between valuing someone's work and valuing them. But tonight, alone in his perfect empty apartment, Elijah Hall admitted something he'd been avoiding his entire adult life. He was lonely, desperately, achingly lonely. And all the money and success in the world couldn't fill the void where human connection should have been. For the first time since his mother died, Elijah prayed, not to any particular God, just to the universe, to fate, to whatever force might be listening. "Let me fix this. Let me be worthy of her. Let me learn to be the kind of man who sees people not as functions, but as human beings. Let me be someone she could trust, someone she could love." The word stuck in his throat. Love. Such a simple word. 4 letters. Infinite weight. Did he love Clare Miller? How could he? He barely knew her. They'd shared one evening, a handful of conversations, a moment of almost connection that had shattered as quickly as it formed, but he kept coming back to the same truth. When she walked out of his office today, something vital had walked out with her, some light he hadn't known he needed until it was gone. Tomorrow, he would get it back. Tomorrow, he would prove he'd learned. Tomorrow, he would show her that he could change. He just hoped tomorrow wouldn't be too late. Claire didn't go to work the next day. She called in sick. It wasn't entirely a lie. Her heart hurt. Her chest felt tight. Every breath reminded her of yesterday's humiliation. Sophie noticed immediately, over breakfast, as Claire moved through the motions of pouring cereal and packing lunch. Her daughter's wise, too old eyes tracked her every movement. "Mom, were you sad?" "No, baby, just tired." "You're lying." Sophie's directness was a gift and a curse. "I can tell when you're lying. Your voice gets too high." Claire set down the milk carton, sat across from her daughter at their small kitchen table. The morning light slanted through the window, catching dust motes in the air. Ordinary magic. The kind you only noticed when your heart was breaking. "Okay. Yes. I'm sad. Because of work. Because of everything." Sophie reached across the table, took her mother's hand in both of hers, small hands, still a child's hands, but the gesture was ancient, one human offering comfort to another. Dad used to make you sad sometimes too. The observation landed like truth always did, unexpected, undeniable. Yes, he did, but you still loved him. I did, very much. Sophie's brow furrowed with concentration. So it's possible to love someone and be sad because of them at the same time. Yes, sweetheart, that's exactly what's possible. Then maybe you should tell the person who made you sad, because if you loved Dad even when he made you sad, maybe this person deserves to know too. The wisdom of children, simple, clear, devastating. I don't love this person, Claire said automatically. But Sophie just smiled. The knowing smile of someone who saw more than adults wanted them to see. Okay, Mommy. After dropping Sophie at school, Claire found herself driving aimlessly, past the office, though she didn't stop, through downtown, watching people hurry to their important jobs, their important meetings, their important lives. She ended up at Discovery Park, parked her car, and walked the trails until she found a bench overlooking Puget Sound. The water was grey today, matching the sky, making it hard to tell where one ended and the other began. Her phone rang. Dorothy, where are you, honey? At the park. Which park? The one where we scattered David's ashes. Silence. Then, I'm coming. Mom, you don't have to. I know. I'm coming anyway. 30 minutes later, Dorothy appeared on the trail. 68 years old and still moving with the determined stride of someone who'd raised a daughter alone, buried a husband, and learned that showing up was half of love. She sat beside Claire without speaking. Just sat, breathed, watched the water. Finally, Claire broke. It wasn't dramatic, no sobbing, just tears sliding down her face while she stared at the horizon. He made me feel like David did, she said. Like what I have to offer is nice, but not important. Useful, but not valuable. Like I should be grateful someone noticed me at all. Dorothy took her hand. Tell me what happened. All of it. Claire did. The whole story. The gala. The speech. The moment in the hallway when Elijah touched her face. The hope that had bloomed in her chest like spring flowers. And then the meeting yesterday. The clinical praise. The money offered like payment for services rendered. When she finished, Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Do you know what your father told me the day we got married?" Claire shook her head. He said, "Dorothy, I promise I'll always see you, not who I want you to be, who you actually are." And he kept that promise for 37 years. Until the day he died, he saw me. Mom, your father wasn't perfect. He had his failings, but he understood something David never did. That seeing someone means accepting all of them, not just the parts that serve you. Claire wiped her eyes. Elijah saw my gift. He just didn't understand it. Then help him understand. I tried, yesterday, and he offered me money, like I was a consultant he'd hired for a project. Dorothy turned to face her daughter fully. Let me ask you something. When David died, what did you do? I survived. I took care of Sophie. I found a job. I kept going. You did more than that. You rebuilt yourself, took all the broken pieces and made something new. Something stronger. Her mother's eyes were fierce. Are you going to let Elijah Hall's failure to understand be what breaks you again? Or are you going to teach him what it means to truly see someone? I don't want to teach him. I want him to just know. That's the problem, honey. People don't just know, they learn, and sometimes we have to be the ones brave enough to teach them. Claire looked out at the water, at the place where they'd released David's ashes 2 years ago. She'd stood here that day and promised herself she'd survive, that she'd be strong for Sophie, that she'd never let herself be dismissed again, but surviving wasn't enough anymore, and being strong wasn't the same as being whole. What if I try and he still doesn't understand? What if I put myself out there and he just doesn't get it? Then you'll know. Dorothy said simply. "And you'll move forward, but at least you'll know you tried. At least you'll know you stood up for your own worth. I'm scared. Good. Being scared means it matters. If it didn't scare you, it wouldn't be worth doing." That evening, Claire sat at her kitchen table with a blank document open on her laptop. Sophie was doing homework beside her. Dorothy was making dinner, the smell of garlic and onions filling the small apartment. This was her life, this warmth, this love, this simple, beautiful ordinariness. But she wanted more. Not because this wasn't enough, because she'd tasted what it felt like to use her full power, to stand in front of 50 people and speak truth, to save a company with nothing but her humanity. She wanted to do that every day, not for Elijah Hall, for herself. Claire began to type, "Proposal for new position, Director of Strategic Partner Relations." She worked for 3 hours, researching comparable salaries, outlining responsibilities, building a case not just for why the position was needed, but why she was the only person who could fill it. This wasn't about Elijah, this was about her. If he said yes, wonderful. If he said no, she'd take this proposal somewhere else. Someone would see its value. Someone would understand that emotional intelligence wasn't a soft skill. It was the skill that made every other skill possible. At 10 p.m., she closed her laptop, looked at her mother and daughter, both watching her with matching expressions of pride. "I'm going to do it," she said. "Tomorrow. I'm going to walk into his office and tell him exactly what I'm worth." Dorothy smiled. "That's my girl." Sophie jumped up, hugged her mother. "You're the bravest person I know." Claire held her daughter close, breathed in the scent of her shampoo. This was why, not for recognition or money or even for justice, for Sophie, to show her that women could claim their worth, that mothers could be powerful, that dignity mattered more than comfort. That night, after everyone was asleep, Claire stood at her bedroom window, looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Elijah Hall was probably awake too. Probably trying to solve this problem like he solved all problems, with logic and analysis and careful consideration. But this wasn't a problem to solve. It was a lesson to learn, and tomorrow she would teach him, not with anger, not with tears, with truth, with the simple, powerful truth that she was worth more than anyone had ever told her. And it was time she started believing it herself. Morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Claire dressed carefully. Not the navy dress she wore to reception, not the gown from the gala, something in between. A charcoal grey suit she'd bought for David's funeral and never worn again. Professional, serious. The armor of a woman who knew her worth. She arrived at the office early, before most people, before Elijah, certainly. He never came in before 9. She spent the time printing her proposal, putting it in a folder. The physical weight of it felt important. This wasn't an email. This wasn't a casual conversation. This was a manifesto. At 8:45, she took the elevator to the 14th floor. Elijah's assistant wasn't there yet. Good. Claire needed this to be between them. No witnesses, no audience. Just 2 people, finally being honest. She sat in the waiting area, watched the elevator, waited. At 9:23 exactly, the elevator doors opened. Elijah stepped out. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked, his hair uncombed. The precise, controlled CEO replaced by something more human, something more real. He saw her, stopped. His expression cycled through surprise, hope, fear. "Claire," he said. His voice rough with emotion or exhaustion or both. "I was going to come find you. I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you first. Please, I have to say something. I've been up all night trying to understand what I did wrong, and I think I finally—" She stood, held up her hand. "With all respect, Mr. Hall, I don't need you to understand what you did wrong. I need you to listen while I explain what I'm worth." The words landed between them. He blinked, nodded. Okay, yes, okay, your office. Now he led the way, opened the door, gestured her in. She didn't sit, stood in the center of the room, folder in hand, heart pounding but voice steady. Before you speak, before you apologize, before you try to fix this, I need you to hear something. She opened the folder. This is a proposal for a new position at Clean Tech Solutions, Director of Strategic Partner Relations, reporting directly to the CEO. Salary of $180,000 annually, plus full executive benefits. Elijah opened his mouth. She continued. The responsibilities include managing cultural considerations for international partnerships, facilitating relationship building between the company and key stakeholders, and providing strategic guidance on interpersonal dynamics. She met his eyes. This isn't about the gala. This isn't about one evening. This is about recognizing that the skill set I possess is as valuable as engineering or finance or any other discipline this company relies on. He was listening, really listening, not interrupting, not analyzing, just hearing her. I'm not asking for this position, Claire said. I'm telling you this position needs to exist, and I'm telling you I'm the person qualified to fill it. If you don't agree, that's fine. I'll take this proposal to your competitors. Because I know my worth now, and I'm not going to settle for being someone's receptionist when I could be someone's partner. The word hung in the air. Partner. Not employee, not consultant. Partner. And if this is about the other night, she continued, her voice softer now but no less firm, if this is about that moment in the hallway, where you touched my face and said we needed to talk, then we need to be clear. I'm not interested in being valued only when I'm useful. I'm not interested in being someone's charity case or career advancement project. I'm interested in being seen as a whole human being, with gifts and flaws and complexity, not as a tactic you can deploy, as a person you can know. Elijah's eyes were bright. He swallowed hard, nodded. So that's my proposal, Claire finished. Professional terms are in the folder. You can review them and get back to me by end of business today. If the answer is no, I'll have my resignation on your desk Monday morning. She set the folder on his desk, not for dramatic effect, simply because her hands were shaking and she needed to put it down. She turned to leave. Claire, wait. His voice stopped her. Please, just let me say one thing. She waited, didn't turn around. You're right, he said. About all of it. I reduced your humanity to tactics because I didn't know how else to process it. I praised your gift in clinical terms because that's the only language I know. I offered you money because I thought that's what success looked like. And I was wrong. About everything. She heard him move closer. Felt him behind her, not touching. Just present. My father taught me that charm was a weapon, he said quietly. So I learned to distrust anyone who possessed it. I built walls so high I forgot what sunlight felt like. And then you walked into that gala and showed me something I'd forgotten was possible. That connection could heal, that vulnerability could be strength, that being real was braver than being perfect. Claire closed her eyes, listening. When you walked out of here yesterday, he continued, when you said you thought I saw you, you were right. I did see you. I do see you. But I didn't honor what I saw. I processed it, analyzed it, tried to fit it into frameworks I understood, because the alternative was too terrifying. What alternative? Admitting that you'd changed me, that in one evening you'd undone 45 years of careful self-protection, that I'd started falling for you the moment you told Hiroshi about cherry blossoms and daughters and all the reasons why connection matters more than data. The confession settled over her like snow, soft, inevitable, transforming everything it touched. But I don't want you to accept this position because of that, he said. I want you to accept it because you're right, because this company needs what you offer. Because emotional intelligence isn't a soft skill. It's the skill that makes everything else possible, and you possess it in ways I've never seen. Claire turned around, looked at him, really looked. He was crying, this brilliant, guarded man who'd built an empire on logic and precision, tears running down his face, making no attempt to hide them. "I'm accepting the position," she said quietly, "and I'm accepting it because I'm worth it, not because you finally understand that, because I finally do." He nodded, wiped his eyes. "Good. That's good. And about the other thing," she continued, "about you falling for me. I need you to know something. I'm not ready for that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm a widow, a mother. And I've been hurt by too many people who said they saw me, but never really looked. I understand." But she allowed herself the smallest smile. "If you're willing to be patient, if you're willing to let this be something that grows slowly, without pressure or expectations, then maybe someday I could be ready." His face transformed, hope replacing despair. "I can be patient. I can be anything you need me to be. Don't be anything. Just be real. Be honest. Be someone who values me for who I am, not what I can do for you." He held out his hand. "Partner." She took it, shook it firmly. "Partner." And in that moment, Clare Miller stepped into her power, not because a man validated her, but because she'd finally validated herself. The rest, she knew, would follow. 3 days later, Clare walked into a company-wide meeting. She wore her new suit, charcoal grey with a hint of blue, professional but not severe. Confident but not arrogant, the uniform of someone who knew exactly who she was. The conference room was packed. Every employee from Clean Tech Solutions crammed in, standing room only. Board members in the front row, executives lining the walls. The receptionist who'd taken Claire's old position, looking nervous and excited. At the podium stood Elijah Hall. He looked different, softer somehow, like whatever had been holding him rigid had finally released. He smiled when he saw Clare enter, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes. The room quieted. He began, 3 weeks ago, this company nearly failed. We had brilliant technology, solid projections, and all the right data, and we were about to lose everything because I, as your CEO, didn't understand something fundamental. That business is about people, about connection, about trust, and no amount of technology can replace that. The room was silent, attentive. Someone saved us. Someone taught me that emotional intelligence isn't a soft skill. It's the skill that makes every other skill matter. That understanding cultural nuances, building genuine relationships, and honoring people's humanity isn't just nice to have, it's essential. He looked directly at Clare. That someone is Clare Miller. Many of you knew her as our receptionist. Now, I'm honored to introduce her as our new Director of Strategic Partner Relations. Applause. Genuine, warm applause. Clare stepped forward, stood beside Elijah at the front of the room. This wasn't just about a title or a salary, Elijah continued. This is about recognizing that we've been operating under a flawed assumption, that technical expertise alone drives success. Starting today, we're committed to valuing all forms of intelligence, technical and emotional, analytical and interpersonal, individual achievement and collaborative success. More applause. Clare saw faces in the crowd, people she'd helped over the past 18 months, problems she'd solved, connections she'd made, all of them seeing her differently now. Not because she'd changed, because they finally understood who she'd been all along. "Miss Miller will be building her own team," Elijah said, "creating new partnerships, and most importantly, teaching us all how to be better at the human side of business, because that's where real transformation happens. Not in our technology, in our humanity." When the meeting ended, people approached Clare, congratulating her, asking questions, treating her like the executive she'd become. But the moment that mattered came later, after everyone had left, after the conference room had emptied, just Clare and Elijah gathering papers, catching their breath. "You didn't have to do all that," she said. "The public recognition, It was more than I asked for. It was less than you deserved." He paused. "There's something else. The Tanaka group specifically requested that you be their primary contact. They want to work with you, not just with the company." Her chest warmed. "Really? Really? You made an impression. A real one." He smiled. "Turns out being human is good for business." Claire laughed. Who knew? They stood there, two people who'd found each other in the middle of their own transformations, not finished, not perfect, but better than they'd been. "And getting better still. Sophie's ballet recital is tomorrow night," Claire said. "If you wanted to come, no pressure, just, it's important to me. And I thought maybe you'd like to see what matters most in my life." "I'd love that." His voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you for inviting me. Dorothy will be there too. Fair warning, she'll interrogate you. I look forward to it. And Sophie will probably ask inappropriate questions. I hope she does." Claire picked up her folder, headed for the door, turned back. "Elijah, yes, thank you for listening, for learning, for being willing to change. Thank you for teaching me, for being patient, for showing me that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be." She left, walked to her new office, her name already on the door, Director Clare Miller. Inside, she sat at her desk, opened her laptop, started planning her next steps, building her team, designing programs, creating something that had never existed before. But mostly, she just breathed, let it sink in. She'd done it, not by being smaller or quieter or more convenient, by being exactly who she was, loudly, unapologetically, powerfully. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dorothy. "Proud of you, honey, always have been, but today especially." Another text from Sophie. "Mom, everyone at school is asking if you're famous now. I said you've always been famous to me. Love you." Claire smiled, wiped her eyes, typed back. "Love you too, sweetheart. See you tonight. Can't wait to hear about your day." Because that was the truth. She'd climbed to the executive suite, but home was still a small apartment, with a daughter who thought her mother hung the moon, and that was worth more than any corner office could ever be. The question now was whether Elijah Hall understood that, whether he could love not just Claire the director, but Claire the mother, Claire the daughter, Claire the whole, complicated, beautiful human being. Tomorrow night's ballet recital would be the test, not of his ability to show up, but of his ability to embrace her entire world, to see that her power didn't come from boardrooms. It came from loving Sophie, honoring Dorothy, choosing dignity over comfort. If he could love that woman, then maybe, just maybe, there was hope for them after all. The ballet recital was held in the auditorium of Sophie's school, not fancy, not professional, just proud parents and nervous children, and the particular magic of watching your daughter do something brave. Claire arrived early with Dorothy, helping Sophie with her costume backstage, pink tulle and satin ribbons. Her daughter's face flushed with excitement and terror in equal measure. "Mom, what if I mess up? Then you'll mess up, and everyone will love you anyway, because we're not here to watch perfection, we're here to watch you try." Sophie hugged her. Tight. "You're really good at this mom thing. I have a really good daughter to practice on." As Claire returned to the audience, she scanned the rows, parents settling in, cameras ready. The energy of people who understood that these small moments were actually the biggest ones. And there, in the back row, slightly out of place in his suit jacket and jeans, sat Elijah Hall. He'd come, not to the executive box at a symphony, not to a fancy performance with champagne at intermission, to a school auditorium with folding chairs and a stage made of plywood. Claire made her way to him, sat down, Dorothy beside her, studying Elijah with the sharp eyes of a grandmother who knew heartbreak and didn't want to see her daughter hurt again. "You made it," Claire said. "Wouldn't miss it." His smile was nervous. "Thank you for inviting me." Dorothy leaned forward. "You're the one who finally figured out my daughter is brilliant?" Elijah met her gaze. "I'm the one who almost missed it. But yes, she's extraordinary. Good answer." Dorothy sat back, marginally satisfied. The lights dimmed. The music started. And 40 children took the stage, including Sophie, third from the left, concentrating so hard her tongue stuck out slightly. She was beautiful, not because she was perfect. She wasn't. She wobbled on one pirouette, forgot a step, recovered with grace and kept going. Beautiful because she was trying, because she was brave, because she was 10 years old and doing something that scared her in front of everyone she loved. Claire felt tears start, the good kind. The kind that came from pride so intense it hurt. She felt a hand cover hers, Elijah's hand, warm and solid and there. "She's amazing," he whispered, just like her mum. Claire didn't pull away, didn't overthink it, just let him hold her hand while they watched her daughter dance. Beside her, Dorothy smiled, said nothing, but the approval was clear. After the recital, backstage was chaos, children running, parents congratulating. Sophie found them, still in her costume, glowing with accomplishment. Did you see me not fall?" "We saw you not fall," Claire confirmed. "And we saw you be absolutely incredible." Sophie beamed, then noticed Elijah. "You came." "I did. You were wonderful. I messed up the part in the middle. So did half the other dancers. But you kept going. That's what made it beautiful." Sophie studied him with that intense, childlike scrutiny that saw more than adults wanted to reveal. "Are you my mom's boyfriend?" The question landed like a grenade. Claire started to deflect. Elijah beat her to it. "Not yet," he said honestly, "but I hope to be. Someday. If your mom decides she wants that." Sophie considered this. "Do you make her happy? I'm trying to learn how." "Good. She deserves to be happy. She's the best mom in the world. I believe you. And if you make her sad, I'll be really mad at you. That's fair." Satisfied, Sophie hugged her mother. "Can we get ice cream?" Dorothy laughed. "I think that's a yes from everyone." They went to a small ice cream shop near the school, sat at a corner booth. Sophie in her costume, makeup smudged, completely content. Dorothy watching everything with grandmother's wisdom. Claire trying to process that this was her life, this moment. This imperfect, ordinary, extraordinary moment. And Elijah tasting mint chocolate chip and listening to Sophie describe every step of her performance with passionate detail, looking more relaxed than Claire had ever seen him. He fit, impossibly, unexpectedly he fit. After ice cream in the parking lot, Dorothy took Sophie to the car to give them privacy. Elijah turned to Claire. "Thank you for including me tonight, for letting me see this part of your life. This is the most important part of my life. I know, and I'm honored you shared it with me." They stood there, close but not touching. Two people learning each other, taking their time, being patient. "I meant what I said to Sophie," Elijah continued, "about wanting to be your boyfriend someday, when you're ready." He smiled. "Though I feel like I should clarify that at 45, boyfriend seems like an inadequate word. What would you prefer?" "Partner." He met her eyes. "In every sense of the word. I'm not ready yet, I know, but I'm getting there. I'll wait, however long it takes." Claire stepped closer, reached up, touched his face the way he'd touched hers in the hallway that night. Her thumb brushing his cheekbone, his breath catching. "Thank you," she said softly, "for being patient, for being real, for showing up tonight not because it advanced your career, but because it mattered to me. Everything that matters to you matters to me." The kiss, when it came, was gentle, soft. A promise more than a claim. Her lips against his for 3 heartbeats. Long enough to mean something. Short enough to leave them wanting more. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "Good night, Elijah." "Good night, Claire." She walked to her car, looked back once. He was still standing there, watching her go, looking like a man who'd finally found what he'd been searching for without knowing he was lost. In the car, Sophie was chattering to Dorothy about ice cream and pirouettes and everything wonderful about being 10. Claire caught her mother's eye in the rearview mirror. Dorothy smiled, nodded, approved. And as they drove home through the Seattle night, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not just hope, not just happiness, peace. The kind that came from knowing exactly who you were and being content with that truth. She was a mother, a daughter, a director, a woman learning to love again. She was powerful and vulnerable, competent and flawed, confident and still healing. She was human, beautifully, perfectly, imperfectly human, and for the first time in a very long time, that was enough. 1 year later, the private jet touched down in Tokyo's Haneda airport just after sunrise. Claire watched Japan emerge from the clouds, a sprawl of civilization wrapped around ancient tradition, her third trip this year. She was getting used to the rhythm of international travel now, the jet lag, the cultural transitions, the particular exhaustion that came from being professionally brilliant for days at a time. She loved every minute of it. Her phone buzzed as soon as they landed, messages flooding in, 1 from her team back in Seattle, 3 from partners in Singapore, 2 from the Tanaka group confirming tonight's dinner, and 1 from Elijah. How was the flight? Missing you already. She smiled, typed back, smooth flight, Tokyo is beautiful. How's everything there? His response came immediately. Company's running fine. More importantly, Sophie's science project is done. Your mother says you'd be proud. I'm pretty sure we violated several laws of physics, but it stands upright and doesn't smell bad, so we're calling it a win. Claire laughed out loud. The flight attendant smiled at her, recognizing the sound of happiness. Her life had changed so much in 12 months. After accepting the director position, she'd thrown herself into building something unprecedented. A team dedicated to relationship intelligence, programs that trained executives in cultural competency, partnerships that valued human connection as much as profit margins. Clean Tech Solutions had signed 8 new international deals, 7 of them directly attributed to Claire's work. The board had called her indispensable. Industry publications had profiled her. Competitors had tried to recruit her. She'd stayed, not because of salary or prestige, because she was building something that mattered, proving every day that emotional intelligence was real power. Her driver was waiting at arrivals, distinguished older gentleman who always had green tea and fresh towels ready. Mr. Tanaka had assigned him personally after her first visit. Miss Miller, welcome back to Tokyo. Your hotel is ready. Meeting is at 10 a.m. Perfect. Thank you, Nakamura-san. The Tokyo office of Tanaka Ventures was a blend of traditional and modern. Tatami mats and cherry blossom paintings alongside cutting-edge technology, East and West in conversation, not conflict. Hiroshi Tanaka greeted her in the lobby, bowed. She bowed back, the gesture natural now after months of practice. Claire-san, so good to see you. Tanaka-san, the pleasure is mine. Over tea, they discussed the new partnership, a joint venture in sustainable agriculture, combining cleantech's technology with traditional Japanese farming wisdom. It was exactly the kind of project that honored both innovation and heritage. Your proposal was excellent, Hiroshi said, but I have one question. This section about community integration. You mentioned building trust through cultural respect. What does that mean in practice? Claire pulled out her tablet, showed him the implementation plan. We start by listening, not coming in with solutions, spending months learning from local farmers, understanding their needs, their fears, their hopes. Then we build technology that serves them, not the other way around. Hiroshi smiled. You have learned much this year. I've had excellent teachers. After the meeting, Keiko joined them for lunch. The older woman had become something like a mentor to Claire, teaching her about Japanese culture, yes, but more about how to move through the world with grace and authority simultaneously. Elijah is well, Keiko asked over sushi. Very well. He's been taking care of my daughter this week while I'm here. Keiko's eyes twinkled. That is good. A man who values family values everything. He's learning. Claire smiled. We both are. Love is always learning, Keiko said. My husband and I have been married 35 years. We are still learning each other. The day you stop learning is the day love dies. That evening, after dinner and negotiations and all the professional brilliance required of her, Claire returned to her hotel room, kicked off her heels, ordered room service, called home. Sophie answered, voice bright with excitement. Mom, guess what? My science project got an A. That's wonderful, sweetheart. What did you make? A model of the water cycle. With real evaporation. Elijah helped me with the physics part. He's pretty smart for a CEO. Claire laughed. He is pretty smart. I mean, not as smart as you, but close. Where is he now? Putting Grandma's groceries away. Want to talk to him? In a minute. First, tell me about your day. They talked for 20 minutes, about school and friends and the new ballet routine Sophie was learning. Ordinary details that mattered more than any business deal. Finally, Elijah got on the line. His voice warm and familiar and home. Hey yourself, I heard you're good at science projects now. I'm good at following 10-year-old instructions. She's the genius. Thank you for being there. For taking care of her this week. Claire. His voice was serious. I'm not taking care of her as a favor to you. I'm taking care of her because I love her, because she matters to me. Because when you agreed to let me be part of your life, that meant all of it. The business trips and the ballet recitals and the science projects. I know, but I'm still grateful. When do you come back? Friday morning? My flight lands at 6 a.m. I'll be there, waiting at the airport, with terrible coffee and a possibly concerning amount of enthusiasm. She smiled. I can't wait. I love you, Claire. The words were easy now, natural. Said often enough that they'd lost the terror and kept only the truth. I love you too. After they hung up, Claire stood at her hotel window, looking out at Tokyo's glittering skyline. This city that had once seemed impossibly foreign now felt like a second home. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, invisible receptionist, widowed mother, someone who'd forgotten she was allowed to dream. That woman would never have believed this was possible, this life, this success, this love. But here she was, 39 years old, director of strategic partner relations, making deals in Tokyo, raising a brilliant daughter, falling deeper in love with a man who saw her completely and loved what he saw. Her phone chimed, a photo from Elijah, Sophie and Dorothy in the kitchen, making cookies, flour everywhere, both grinning at the camera. The caption, "Your family misses you. Hurry home." Not his family, hers, but becoming theirs. Slowly, carefully, in the way that mattered most, Claire saved the photo, her lock screen, a reminder that success wasn't measured in deals signed or countries visited. It was measured in flower-covered faces and science projects and the people waiting for you to come home. She had 4 more days in Tokyo, 4 days of meetings and partnerships and proving her worth. Then she'd go home to Sophie and Dorothy and Elijah, to her small apartment that was feeling slightly too small these days, to conversations about maybe moving in together, maybe blending their lives, maybe building something permanent. But that was future talk. Right now, in this moment, Claire simply stood at the window and let herself feel it, the fullness, the rightness, the extraordinary ordinariness of a life well lived. Once upon a time, she'd been invisible, dismissed, overlooked. Now she was essential, valued, seen. And the best part, she hadn't needed anyone to give her that. She'd claimed it for herself. Everything else, the job and the love and the success, had simply followed, because that's how power works. Real power, not the kind given by others, the kind you discover in yourself, the kind that says, I am worthy, I am enough, I am here. Claire closed the curtains, climbed into bed, set her alarm for the early meeting. Let exhaustion pull her under. And somewhere between waking and sleep, She whispered a thank you to the universe, to fate, to whatever force had brought her from that reception desk to this Tokyo hotel room. Thank you for not letting me stay small. Thank you for pushing me to grow. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late, that second acts are real, that love comes when you're finally ready, that being human is the most powerful thing we can be. She slept, dreamed of cherry blossoms and Seattle rain and coming home, dreamed of a little girl with dark curls and a man with storm-grey eyes and a mother who'd always believed, dreamed of ordinary magic and extraordinary grace and all the ways life surprised you when you were finally brave enough to let it. And in the morning, she would wake up and do it all again. Be brilliant and vulnerable, strong and gentle, professional and maternal. All of it at once. All of herself. Holding nothing back. Because Clare Miller had learned the most important lesson, that you didn't have to choose between career and family, power and love, success and humanity. You could have all of it. You could be all of it. You just had to be brave enough to claim it, and patient enough to build it, and wise enough to know that the best things in life were never given, they were earned, one honest moment at a time. Tokyo glittered outside her window. Seattle waited across an ocean, and Clare Miller, once invisible, now essential, slept peacefully in the life she'd built from nothing but courage and truth. The end was really just the beginning, and it was more beautiful than she'd ever dared to dream. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.